Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers won their first game of an 8-game homestand, first game after their 8-game Grammy road trip to improve to 31-19. They beat the Philadelphia 76ers 119-115 in a crazy game that I feel like encapsulated the entire Lakers season in one game. They get off to the slow start in the first quarter, slow start in the first half. Third quarter, it starts to look like it's slipping away. And then the Lakers close this game, outscoring Philly 50-36 with some incredible play from Austin Reeves, who had 35 points, 21 in the second half. But big plays up and down the roster. Maxi Kleber with his defense against Joel Embiid and switching on to Philly's perimeter players. Jared Vanderbilt, Rui Hachimura, LeBron had big buckets down the stretch. And they did all this despite losing Luka Doncic at the 3-minute mark of the second quarter to what the Lakers deemed at the time left leg soreness, but was actually a hamstring injury. So we will be touching on that as well. So that's why, to me, this encapsulated everything with the Lakers season. They were lifeless in the first quarter, got off to a slow start, were not really trying defensively, not really getting back in transition, turning the ball over left and right. Then they also had this incredible stretch. They won a clutch time game. They lost a notable player to injury. It was just like the first 50 games of the season wrapped into one for the Lakers. This team can bring both joy and frustration in any given moment. You just don't know what you're going to get. But they are now tied technically for the number 4 seed in the West. They are in a 3-way tie with Houston and Minnesota. Due to the tiebreakers, Houston currently has the tiebreaker over LA for winning the first head-to-head matchup. Houston is the 4 seed, LA is at 5, and Minnesota is at 6. But shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to the chat. Appreciate you all. We had a long day today with trade deadline, getting up for that in the morning, then went live for about 2.5 hours. If you guys did not hear that or watch that, I recommend checking it out after this. But I will be touching on the trade a little bit more with one of my takeaways. But let's just get into it. So Buha's big picture, I'm going to touch a lot on the game, but I do want to start with Luka because I think this is the biggest thing coming out of this game is just Luka and his status and his availability, right? He is the Lakers' best player. He had been playing, just had an incredible Grammy road trip. Just one player of the month for January, I think, had been playing at an MVP caliber level, clearly first team All NBA level. And after a rough December by his standards, had a remarkable January and had been playing some of his best basketball of the season. So Luka, there's a collision late in the second quarter, and Luka comes out of it kind of grabbing at his left hamstring. And the next couple possessions, you could just see him laboring. And based on Luka's style of play, he is a very physical player, and he just always is getting kneed or hit in the legs. It's something that JJ's talked about, something that Luka's talked about. So it's not uncommon necessarily to see Luka grab at his quad, grab at his hamstring, grab at his knee, his calf, whatever. Like, he's constantly getting banged up, and guys are he's backing them down or going off screens, whatever. He's getting kneed, he's getting hit. But this one felt a little bit different. It felt like he was in a little bit more pain visibly. Timeouts called, and you see Luka kind of limping over toward the bench, and he ends up kicking the scorer's table in frustration. There was a video of it that was making the rounds on X, and he ends up leaving to the locker room and does not return for the rest of the game. So at the time, it's like the Lakers are not really playing that well. They then give up that run to start the third quarter, then eventually rally at the end of the third. But I think, like, as an aside to this, it was a really nice win for the Lakers to do this without Luka and to have a level of resolve to win a game without their best player and under less than ideal circumstances, right? Austin was on a minutes restriction. They just traded Gabe, which was a blow to the team from a morale perspective. The guys in that locker room love Gabe, and that was a hit for them, especially today. Also did not have Luke Kennard yet, who potentially could make his debut as soon as Saturday against Golden State. But like, you have all these moving parts, all these factors. You lose Luka in the first half, and you still find a way to win this game. But with regards to Luka specifically, I think it's worth noting that the Lakers are 1 week away from the All-Star break. Their schedule over the next week is Saturday against Golden State, Monday against OKC, Tuesday against San Antonio, and then Thursday against Dallas, leading into the All-Star break. But I saw Luka after the game walking out. The Lakers press conference, the primary press conference room is right next to the locker room exit, or like the locker room tunnel exit. So right as I was getting to the press conference, Luka walked out with a security guard, and he walked out on his own accord. There was only a couple of us who witnessed it, but he was walking. So that was a good sign, right? If he's has a crutch or has a boot or what I mean, obviously it's a hamstring, so he's not gonna have a boot, but like, if there was some assistance or something more serious there, I think that would have been concerning, right? But he did have a slight limp. Like, you could tell he was laboring on it. It is fresh, and we just don't know the extent of it right now. JJ said after the game that both Luka and the medical team were in agreement that they felt he should not return to the game, and that he was just dealing with some soreness. They're unsure of if it's an injury or just merely soreness, and he will be having imaging soon to determine the severity. I think depending on what the imaging says, and depending how serious this is, like, I think it would make some sense for Luka to at least miss a couple games, if not just the entirety of the rest of this portion of the season into the All-Star break. Right now, like we saw with Denver, they had Aaron Gordon dealt with the hamstring stuff last season, dealt with it again to start this season, came back, now is dealing with it again. And it's just something that you don't want to be messing with, similar to the calf. Peyton Watson just suffered a major hamstring injury. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. So I think the Lakers got to look at I know every game in the West matters, and they finally just got healthy, and we're starting to build some measure of continuity here and chemistry with the full strength group and having the big three together finally. But you don't want to mess with a soft tissue injury. You don't want to mess with a hamstring. And this could be something that lingers throughout the course of the season if you do not take care of it properly. So with how the Lakers have handled injuries for the most part, I would not be surprised to see them take a cautious approach here. But I think it is worth noting that with 1 week until the All-Star break, I think the prudent approach would probably be erring on the more cautious side and not taking any risks with this, assuming it's not more serious. Obviously, it could be. I mean, Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon both suffered like 4 to 6 week hamstring injuries. So there's a possibility it's a 1 to 2 week injury. There's a possibility it's a 4 to 6 week injury. There's a possibility there's no injury at all, and he just tweaked it a little bit, and he's going to be able, day to day, able to play on Saturday. But I think the Lakers just got to be careful with this, because Luka, especially with how he's been playing, like, he is playing at the level the Lakers need him to play at. Didn't have a good game tonight, and I will touch on that in the notable performers section, or like a good game up to that point. But in general, Luka's been playing great lately, and I think you don't want to overtax him if you don't have to, right? And I don't think the Lakers are in a situation where they have to risk that at all. But that to me is like the biggest thing coming out of this game, because it was a nice win. It was a nice comeback. Austin looked great. The role players all contributed down the stretch. There was a lot to be encouraged and happy with coming out of a road trip. I think part of why they started so slow was just, I mean, I wasn't even on the full trip, and I can feel the jet lag and just like transitioning from the East Coast to the West Coast. And in my beat writing days, that first game back, you were always like half awake for that game, and you could just kind of feel it. And then often the team would get off to a slow start and potentially even lose that game because that's just kind of how it is coming off of the road. So LA withstood that. They withstood the Luka injury, and they ended up prevailing to win this game. In terms of notable performers, we have to start with Austin Reeves. I am going to be touching on him with one of my takeaways, so don't want to get too much into him, but 35 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 12 for 17 shooting, 5 for 8 on threes, 6 for 7 from the free throw line. Did have 5 turnovers, struggled at times with some of their ball pressure and athleticism. They were trapping him basically from the moment he entered the game, but like Austin, just especially to start that fourth quarter, where he hits back-to-back threes, then forces a turnover on Joel Embiid in the Lakers zone. You know, he gets switched onto him and forces him to put the ball on the ground and turn the ball over. It was just like that sequence alone. It got the Lakers. They were down 2 going into the fourth. He hits the 3 to take the lead, hits another 3 to put them up 4, and they're basically in control the rest of the way. Philly obviously is within striking distance for most of the fourth quarter, but from that point on, LA took control of the game, and Austin, 21 points in the second half, just had an incredible game tonight, and didn't take him long to start looking like himself. Then we're going to go to a different direction here because we have to look at Maxi Kleber, who closed this game, played 26 minutes, with no Jackson Hayes, remember, who was suspended. I didn't even get to touch on that earlier today or up until right now, but boneheaded decision. We saw the video. He bumps the Wizards mascot, gets a 1-game suspension for that. JJ said pregame that he apologized to JJ and the organization, but was going to address his teammates as well and publicly apologize to all of them. But with Jackson out, Maxi Kleber gets the backup center minutes. And I know a lot of people wanted him traded, and I was in that boat as well. I thought up until this point, he's had a few of these types of games, but they've been few and far between. He has not really contributed. And overall, if we're analyzing his value up to this point in the season, he's been a minimum player, and maybe that's putting it kindly. But I would say best game of the season, at least in that conversation for Maxi. Like he's never going to be a guy who pops with the box score, but again, plays 26 minutes, closes the game, 4 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and just so many little plays. Like there's so many things that he does that I feel like don't show up in the box score in terms of, like, there'll be a Sixers defender draped on a ball handler in the backcourt. Maxi goes and screens for the guy, gets him a little bit momentum, getting downhill, creating separation, just sort of being a nuisance out there. Like he is a nuisance. He is annoying to play against. And I think that's an advantage for the Lakers. But the switching, both Lakers were able to close the game, switching 1 through 5, but also being part of the zone. And I thought he had some Embiid was incredible tonight. It was such a turnaround from Embiid's performance against the Lakers in early December. Remember that game? I think he went something like 2, not 2, but he hit a few shots and he was like 3 for 19 or something crazy like that. 3 for 16 in that game. He was terrible in that game. Tonight it was a different story. He dropped 35, 7 and 7, 13 and 19 shooting. Felt like every time he was shooting, it was going to go in. But Maxi had some key stops on him in the fourth quarter and also switched on to some of their guards. So Maxi's not an every night guy, but I think about the Utah game and the Portland game and some of these games that he's had this season. And he has been like, when they dust him off and when he can conjure up the energy, he has had useful performances for the Lakers this season. And I don't think they win this game without him, as crazy as that sounds for a guy who has been on the outskirts of the rotation all season, a guy who many people have been, including myself, clamoring to trade. Team best, Lakers are plus 23 in his 26 minutes. Team best mark by far. Next closest players were Rui and Vando. Lakers were plus 16 in their minutes. Really, the bench I thought was great tonight and led the charge. But Maxey, like I think game ball technically to Austin, especially with him coming off of the injury, but Maxey is like gets like I don't know, get something. I don't know what, a game towel or something. I thought Vando in his defense, like he was pressuring Maxey full court, pressuring VJ Edgecombe full court, but then also switching onto Embiid and battling him. Like he did pick up a couple fouls there early in the fourth, but I was fine with that. Like Vando, that's just part of his DNA. He is a guy who's going to basically foul multiple times on every possession and dare the ref to call it. And sometimes, like thinking about that the Nuggets game against Jokic last year, where he like fouled out in 6 minutes, or like 5 fouls in 6 minutes. Tonight had 5 fouls in his 23 minutes, but Vando, had a couple of nice, had a big cut in the fourth quarter, had another streak out in the second half. Like, the shot continues to be a struggle lately for him. 0 for 3 on threes tonight, but got handed a couple grenades, I will note. But just he set a tone, 2 steals, 1 block, and I thought Vando, his energy in his defense and just the versatility. Like I thought this was one of his better performances of the season, quite frankly, just based on the opponent, but also there's a big difference in guarding Tyrese Maxey versus guarding Joel Embiid, and Jared Vanderbilt is one of those guys who can switch across that matchup seamlessly. Rui had a great game, 14 points, 7 rebounds, hit some big shots in the second half, was a part of the Lakers, starts the third quarter with Luka out. The Lakers decided to keep Austin on the bench because JJ said after the game that because of Austin's minutes restriction, he was on a 24-minute restriction. They stretched it to 25. But if they started him in the third quarter, they were going to have to pull him immediately to adjust his minutes and sort of stagger him and LeBron. So they decided to bring Austin off of the bench in the second half as well and started Rui in Luka's place. But Rui, I thought, competed at a high level defensively, and I thought was a big part of the switching and the zone. And like the Lakers have found something here that's going to be one of my takeaways, just with the switching and the overall size and in these lineups with LeBron and Rui and Vando and a center, and then pick your guard, typically Marcus or Austin, and then previously would have been Gabe, but might now in the future be Kennard. They've kind of found something, I think, with these lineups, and I think Rui has fit in nicely. Dalton Connect, I'm focusing on the bench right now, but Dalton Connect, it was a very odd start to the game in terms of the first 3 subs were Rui, which made sense, and then Maxey and Dalton. Maxey, of course, as the Jackson replacement, but it was just kind of funny to see like Maxey and Dalton enter together, both guys who the fan base really wanted them, the Lakers to trade, and they're part of the first substitution. Dalton doesn't play again. I actually thought had a good shift. That was one of his better recent shifts. Gets an offensive rebound, like was kind of batted around and fell right into his lap under the basket, but he converted on it. Joel Embiid was in striking distance. I thought had some nice defensive possessions in the zone, and did have a turnover on a drive, but like I thought Dalton had a decent 3-minute shift and then didn't play the rest of the way. As for the rest of the starters, or actually I haven't even touched on any of them. LeBron had a very interesting game because this was shaping up to maybe be LeBron's worst game of the season. It still might have been. I think that there's a couple other games we can put in the conversation. But like, so the overall stat line, 17 points, 4 rebounds, 10 assists. It doesn't stand out as like a particularly harmful game. I mean, I look at the Cleveland game on the road trip was probably his worst game of the season, and I would say probably worse than this one. But LeBron had 8 turnovers tonight, which I believe, just scanning through his game logs, he had 8 turnovers against Phoenix in December. Otherwise, yeah, he has 2 6 turnover games, and so that had been his previous season high outside of the 8. And then, so a couple 6 turnover games and now a couple 8 turnover games. But he was just dribbling the ball into the Sixers' hands and throwing passes left to right. And it was a really odd game for him because he had 10 assists. And I thought some of the playmaking and finding shooters and finding cutters, like he was definitely in playmaking mode. I think almost to a fault. He was a little bit too passive and deferential tonight, but it was either like he was making the home run pass for a lob, a cut, a swing pass, a skip pass to the corner, or he was just turning the ball over. And it felt like you didn't know what you were getting possession to possession with him. Really slow offensive start. Looking at it here, believe he had 4 points in the first half, just 1 for 6 shooting. So he ended up going 6 for 11 in the second half with 13 points and had some big buckets in the fourth quarter. One thing with Maxey that I do want to make sure I acknowledge with him, Maxey's been setting some great Gortat screens, which is basically when he's like pinning his man in or trying to get post position, but it's really clearing a lane for the ball handler to drive. So he does it with Luka, he does it with Austin, he does it with LeBron. I think all 3 of those guys might have scored off of Maxey Gortat screens at some point tonight, but LeBron had one late. He had a couple nice drives, got out in transition, had the nice cut for the lob. So I think had a nice close to the game and again had the 10 turnovers, but I thought the defensive effort tonight, only having the 4 rebounds, the 8 turnovers, going 0 for 3 on threes. Like I did not like his start to the game. I thought it was a pretty rough first half, but again, just too many turnovers from him. Jake, I thought it an interesting game. Like I was surprised he didn't play more. He only played 23 minutes, but had some nice finishes, continues to be a nice ancillary piece in the offense, especially second side guy. But one thing that the Lakers did that I really liked as a bit of an adjustment was just based on Philly's personnel, having Edgecombe and Maxey as relatively small guards. Anytime those guys were guarding Jake LaRavia or Rui, they would try to get the deep seal post-ups against them and score. Jake had a couple buckets on that. I also thought he had some good possessions against Embiid. Like Embiid scored on him because Embiid has got, 6-7 inches on Jake and could just turn and shoot over him. But he was the head of the snake at times in the zone or sometimes in the middle and the primary guy on Embiid. And I thought he held up like fairly well in that. He also had 3 steals. So I thought the defensive activity was there. DeAndre Ayton, another game he does not close. I think this one had more to do with Maxey than it did with Ayton, but I thought he had a better first half than second half. He had both of his blocks were in the first half. Did have a couple nice contests, I would say, in the second half, but in general, just not the motor and the defense that you want. And I think as the Lakers have shifted things more towards switching and zone, DA has kind of been the odd man out a little bit because I don't think he's been as great switching lately as he was earlier in the season. And then I think there's a lot of read and react and processing with a zone that I just don't think is a strength of DA's game. So he's kind of been the odd man out here where he's not been closing. I mean, it's basically been since late December. It's like a 50-50 proposition whether DeAndre Ayton is going to close. And I thought it was interesting that in a game that Jackson Hayes does not play due to suspension, Maxi Kleber played 6 minutes more than DeAndre Ayton and closed over him, right? So first month and a half of the season, Ayton was a closing lock. He closed every single game, regardless of performance. The last month and a half, it's been very performance-based. And frankly, he's often been outplayed by his backup counterpart, or the Lakers just go small. They also went small for portions of the fourth quarter. Marcus Smart hit a couple big threes, had several key defensive plays. I think about that jump ball that he forced with, against VJ Edgecombe, and just Marcus doing Marcus things. These are the types of games where he can be frustrating at times, but did not have a turnover and only took 5 shots. I think both of those are positives for Marcus, but Marcus is just a winner, and I think he makes winning plays, and you like having him on your team in if you're the Lakers, you like having him on your team in situations like this. And then Luka, 10 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, but just 3 for 10 shooting, 0 for 4 on threes. Did get to the free throw line, 4 for 4 there, but also 5 turnovers. So had not been a good Luka first half, but he ends up exiting early with the injury. In terms of stat of the night, this is an odd one for me because I like to mix it up. I don't like to always go with the box score, but this is like box score, I guess. A different version of box score stats. The Lakers had 12 stocks tonight, and that's actually subpar compared to some of their recent strong defensive performances. But the interesting thing to me was that they had 2 stocks in the first half and 10 stocks in the second half. They had 0 stocks in the first quarter, 2 stocks in the second quarter, both blocks by DeAndre Ayton. And then they had 10 stocks in the second half. And like that to me epitomized the tale of the first half versus the second half and how just locked in and engaged they were defensively. And again, Jake LaRavia, 3 steals, Maxi Kleber, 3 steals, Jared Vanderbilt, 2 steals and a block. LeBron also had a block. Like those were the plays that they made in the second half. And I thought, especially from that late third quarter on, it was just lights out defense and out executing Philly on both ends. Then 3 takeaways before we get into the Q&A here. Takeaway number 1 is the $240 million man. And what I mean by that is, if I'm Austin Reeves' agents after this game, I am sending the game tape to Rob Pelinka and I am saying, show me the money, because Austin Reeves reminded everybody tonight why this dude is an all-star. He has performed at an all-NBA level when he's been available. He obviously missed a long portion, a large portion of the season, but the Lakers do not win this game without Austin Reeves, and especially with they got some notable contributions, of course, from Rui, Jake LaRavia, DeAndre Ayton, Marcus hitting some big shots down the stretch, and LeBron finally getting going in the fourth. But Austin Reeves carried this offense for stretches of this game and key stretches at that. And I know Austin and his future and his fit with Luka and the contract is always a polarizing thing. I'm sure I'll get some super chats or some pushback on that. But Austin Reeves has played up to, I would say, even above his potential contract with the Lakers this summer. I think his contract with the Lakers is a bargain. I think if we are actually comparing his production this season, he has played more like a $50 million player than a $40 million player. But he's going to get that $40 million contract, whether it's from the Lakers or from another team. I think it's going to be from the Lakers, and they will retain him at his cap hold to maintain that cap flexibility to try to trade or sign other players and then end up signing Austin. But tonight, again, the efficiency, 12 for 17, 5 for 8 on threes, 6 for 7 at the free throw line. We've seen it now in both games with Austin, but just the downhill force that he plays with and his ability. Like, I don't think the playmaking has been fully back with him yet, right? Like only 2 assists tonight, but the ability to break his man down off the dribble, to find the crevices in the defense, to put pressure on the paint, put pressure on the rim, and all that does for the Lakers offense. I just think that's such a vital part to what LA does. And frankly, I think it's something that is a bit, it's a bit of a counterbalance sometimes to the way that LeBron and Luka play. I think LeBron and Luka can sometimes both be a little too jump shot dependent. But when they are trying to get downhill, when they are trying to attack the teeth of the defense, it's more so through the post, right? Like Luka had, I will note, Luka had a couple nice drives tonight, and one of them was off the Gortat screen. One of them was just saw an opening and he had a dunk tonight, right? So, but like Luka and LeBron are less of the line drive type, and more so it's with Luka, it's more so the craft and the decel and the change of pace and just his shiftiness. With LeBron, it's more so the post up and the power. With Austin, it's the speed and it's the ball handling and it's his ability to create separation, both for his own shot, but also to get downhill. And I just think that's been such a missed part of the Lakers offense that we saw tonight against a real opponent, an opponent that had won 5 games in a row, an opponent that was kicking the Lakers' butt for especially the portions Austin was out. Like the starting group got their butts kicked tonight, both to start the first quarter and the third quarter. Austin came in and changed the complexion of the game. So again, if I'm his agents, I'm setting the tape in and demanding, the 5-year, $240 million, which I don't even think they have to demand. I think that is going to be on the table. Takeaway number 2, I do want to bring up so Lakers close with this switch heavy scheme. And I think we've seen a real shift defensively from LA, right? And just sort of what they've been trying to do defensively. It's been a combination of the 1 through 5 switching and the occasional blitzing, trapping, but then also the 2-3 zone. I don't love the 2-3 zone with the starters, like specifically, especially the big threes on the floor. I don't really love the 2-3 zone with those 3 guys because there is an element of with zone, not to get too into it, but you are guarding an area and that does require a lot of awareness and constant head on a swivel and in multiple efforts. And if you're not rotating over because you're not necessarily guarding a man, there are different variations of the Lakers are sort of more of a 2-3 matchup zone, but you can easily give up threes, give up back cuts. Lakers were giving up middle tonight a ton, but also giving up offensive rebounds. And you just need a certain level of awareness that I do think, I guess the alternative is going man and the Lakers got killed in man tonight when they were playing, certain groupings. So they're in a tough spot defensively, right? That's still the clear weakness of this group, but I think they have started to find something here with the zone and with the switching. There are going to be one thing I think that really stood out with Philly tonight was Philly just went 5 for 24 on threes. They are not a good 3-point shooting team and they barely got them up. I mean, the Lakers barely got them up, just 9 for 25, but there will be teams that can shoot the ball. If this was Denver, if this was, I was going to say OKC, but San Antonio or New York, which the Lakers just saw. There are teams that I think against the zone. We saw it. Cleveland carved up the zone, New York carved up the zone, the Clippers carved up the zone pre-trades. There are teams that with a certain level of shooting and offensive firepower can carve it up. Philly tried to do it more so with getting downhill and the speed and beating guys off the dribble, and that's not really the best way to attack it. So part of this was just sort of personnel based, but just wanted to note, the defense has been making strides. I think the Lakers are starting to cultivate a defensive identity that they can rely on in certain matchups. Again, I don't think this is in every team. And most of the elite teams, I don't think they could play this style against necessarily, but I think it worked tonight and it has been working recently in certain matchups. And then takeaway number 3, before we get into the Q&A, just some more Luke Kennard thoughts. So the trade was not official until about 6 p.m. or so. So JJ was not able to talk about it pregame. He talked about it postgame though. First gave a big shout out to Gabe and talked about how important he was to the group and just what he meant. And then went into Luke and said that he's obviously one of the best shooters in the league, but JJ wants him to shoot even more. He feels like Luke is not aggressive enough and turns down too many shots, which is reflected in his 3-point volume and has been one of the knocks on him as a shooter. Is just he wants the perfect shot and he wants his efficiency, but sometimes he's just got to be more aggressive and just let it fly because he is that caliber of a shooter. JJ's known him for 12 years and they obviously have the Duke connection, but then he was also talking about using Luke as a second side guy and sort of him almost being like an offense unto himself and just with his ability to move without the basketball and the gravity that he has, but also not just the gravity, his passing. And that was something I touched on earlier today. I think he's an underrated passer, solid pocket passer, but just makes quick decisions, keeps the ball moving. And I think to the point of him needing to be more aggressive, like he is not going to force things. So if two on the ball, he's going to find the open man, or he's going to reverse the ball, swing the ball, whatever. So just thought it was interesting to hear JJ talk a little bit about him and his fit and how JJ envisions this all. For more of my thoughts on Kennard, I'm sure you guys will have some questions in the chat, but I talked about the trade for 2.5 hours earlier today. So I recommend checking that out. But with all that said, let's get into the super chats. First one from U to the We. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for being a member for 3 months. Deja vu, LD playing like poop emoji and leaves early with an injury. I saw some of this, right? And I know there's sort of been this narrative or this critique with Luka. I do not think that was it. And, there's been other games that he has had slowish starts to that he has bounced back in the second half. So I don't think there's some like conspiracy with him not having a good first half and being like, oh, it's time to shut it down. Like I truly believe that he was, suffered something. I don't know the extent of it or the severity of it, but I think Luka, I think it takes a lot for Luka to not return, because he obviously, as I said, when discussing it, like he will get banged up. He just, with his style of play and how defenders guard him, he gets these nicks and knacks and the knees to the leg and like the different things. And you can see him pulling and laboring and, just sort of dealing with it. But for him to actually leave the game, go back to the locker room, kick the scores table the way that he did and not return, like I'm not going to, I'm not going to discount that. If people want to have their conspiracies or what they think really happened, that's cool. And again, we'll see how, like, what's the status of the hamstring, but I believe that was real. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Don't understand Lakers front office. Who are they going to sign this summer? Weak free agent class. What's the Giannis package? Should have traded the first for a wing. Let's get into it. So, I share a lot of the skepticism with a lot of the fan base about this summer. I think it is a unique opportunity to reshape the roster in a dramatic way. Like the Lakers have a relatively clean book, looking at their cap sheet outside of, I would say, the Vando contract. And even then, like Vando has been, I don't know if he's quite been playing up to his contract, but he has been playing, I would say, based on the last couple of years, was playing closer to like a minimum level. And this year, I think, I don't know if he's quite at like $11-12 million a year, but I think has been playing definitely above a minimum level and maybe somewhere in that, similar to the salaries that like Jake and Marcus and DA are making, 6 to 8 million-ish range, maybe even a little higher at times. Like there is the offensive limitations, which are omnipresent and you just have to navigate. But Vando's certainly been playing better. And the only reason I bring him up is because I think that's like the one contract that clearly like the Lakers could not trade. Even if they wanted to, they would have to attach a first right now. Outside of that, it's like, Dalton's got a year, Jake's on a good contract. You have the player options with DA and Marcus. You have the Adu contract. You of course have the Luka contract and the extension that he signed. So the Lakers are in a pretty good spot with their cap sheet. However, them not making a move at the deadline and them approaching it the way that they are approaching it has put an immense amount of pressure and spotlight and just gravity on this offseason, because there's a scenario in which they nab Giannis in a package, or maybe there's another star that shakes loose and they're able to put 3 firsts on the table, or technically 2 plus the 2026 drafted player. I like clarifying that on the table for someone, or they throw the Godfather offer at Walker Kessler, the Godfather offer at Peyton Watson, the Godfather offer at Tari Eason. They're going to have 50 to 60-ish million, depending on what happens with some of their contracts, to play with. So you can potentially overpay, overspend on at least one of those guys. And then also there will be my understanding is they're confident that there will be players who shake loose in terms of, we saw a lot of cost cutting moves at the deadline, and with the new CBA kicking in even more, and teams having to navigate the first apron, second apron, the repeater tax, all these different measures that are punitive and force you to basically sell off parts of your team. The Lakers are hoping to be there to benefit. And we've seen this often with lottery teams, where think about, just go through the last few off seasons, like there will always be some sort of trade where a player gets traded to, into space on a lottery team, and it's, and they attach an asset or something to take that on. But that is a form of a team wanting to get off of a contract, and the lottery team is more of a dumping ground for that. For the Lakers, they are hoping to be a positive dumping ground where there is I think OKC is an example. I'm skeptical OKC would give Lou Dort or Isaiah Hartenstein to the Lakers, but they have the team options on Hartenstein and Dort. And if they were to potentially exercise those, but then look to trade one of them, the Lakers could make sense as a suitor there. Now, I am skeptical of this all working out, because I would argue the Lakers have not had a great offseason since the 2019 offseason. I thought they had a decent offseason, the 2020 offseason, though I didn't agree with all their moves. And then since then, it's been the 2021 offseason was a disaster. Didn't really do much in the 2022 offseason. 2023 was about running it back, which I disagreed with at the time as well, and running it back with the Western Conference Finals group. 2024 was, we have all these picks, but then they didn't use them. They rolled it over. They also were like, we were injured this season, so we need to see what we look like with the healthy group. They end up doing the DFS and Luka trades, which saved the season. But then this past season, it's bargain bin hunting with 2 buyout guys, and making Jake LaRavia the first signing. And then it's supposed to be, we're going to improve the team during the season. And then you make an upgrade. I would call it a marginal upgrade, going from Gabe Vincent to Luke Kennard, a significant upgrade in shooting. In terms of overall player quality and impact, I would say, for as much hate as Gabe got, he is a more well-rounded player, and certainly a better defensive player. And he had slipped defensively and had become more of a liability. But for as much of a liability as Gabe was, Luke Kennard is even more of a liability. And a consistent trend with him has been being phased out of playoff series, being phased out of his team's rotations as the season goes on. He's been traded a lot. It's like, I think teams fall in love with the idea of him, and then they end up eventually moving on from him. So low risk investment from LA, just with the future second. But I share the skepticism, because I also see a path for LA to potentially just run it back essentially with this group, maybe just without LeBron and with one tweak. But if you take LeBron off this team and let's just say optimistically put Peyton Watson on this team, is that team on the level of OKC or Denver or San Antonio? Or I don't think so. So I think they need more than that, right? That is a nice start of you're getting younger, and Peyton Watson, I think, can grow into a certain role. But he's not better than this version of LeBron, at least when LeBron is at his normal level. And then you also have the just general needs of more two-way shooting, more two-way play, more athleticism, more shooting up and down the roster. Lakers have a lot of needs, and it's hard to address every single need in a one off season in one trade cycle. So now we're talking about them potentially building like half of a roster and then being like, hey, 2026, 27, we're going to use the rest of our picks or we're going to do this or that to do it. So I get the frustration. I get the skepticism. There's been a lot of, we're going to do this that just has not really materialized. There's been a lot of kicking the can down the road, and anyone who has an issue with that, I don't blame you, because I have had an issue with the same thing. I've seen the same thing. I've been at all those press conferences. I've heard all the grand plans that haven't played out. Like, I get it. I get it. So I get the frustration. Ryan Lucas, thank you for the super chat. Buha, you demand. Who's your buyout targets? Max amount LA can sign 2 or 3. Who would LA waive if buyout market opens? DA, Maxey, Dalton. Cheers. Well, what's funny is I would have said Maxey, but I don't think he is getting waived. Certainly not after tonight, right? But looking at the Lakers cap sheet here, I'm going to pull it up. My buyout target right now of all the current guys would be Haywood Highsmith. Now, there's a mystery box element to him because he has not played this season and he's coming off an injury. Anytime a guy has missed the amount of time that he's missed and is around that, late 20s range, you just don't know how they're going to look, how they're going to perform. So maybe you start him with the 10-day and then go from there. But he's really the only guy, Lon's, I just think in theory, right? Like the Lakers can still use another true wing, I would say, more of a perimeter player than Rui, more of a perimeter player than Vando, more of a perimeter player than even Jake. And if they could add one more of those types of guys, I think that balances out the rotation a little bit better. I don't think they need a Cam Thomas type. I know people have already been floating that idea around. I like the idea of a bench scorer, but Cam Thomas, I just don't think really passes the vibe test. He's a minus defender. I don't know if you guys saw the statement he released to ESPN. The statement he released to ESPN to me was a red flag as well. I think he is someone who thinks higher of himself than his actual game. And I also think it's a red flag that Brooklyn waived him and that Brooklyn is desperate for blue chip talent. We just saw the Lakers play that team. I don't know how many, if any of their rookies and young players are actually going to turn into starting level players and in future cornerstones for that team in the future. On paper, Cam Thomas should be that guy. But the Brooklyn Nets looked at Cam Thomas, looked at the last couple of years, looked at all of his deficiencies and his game, and were like, nah, we're good. You can go find a new team. So I would stay away from Cam Thomas. I think that's a situation where he's going to be playing for himself and his next contract and just trying to reassert his status. And you could galaxy brain it into being like, well, that can be valuable off the bench, but no, I'm out on that. Lonzo, Pat Connaughton, those guys just don't really move the needle enough for me and aren't quite, I think, what the Lakers need. So I think Haywood Highsmith, to me, by far, is the most attractive buyout option right now. My understanding, and I have a general understanding of the cap and everything, but my understanding is they have upwards of 2 players they can sign. Now, it would be dependent on them waiving someone. I do not think DA is a candidate to be waived despite his recent, we'll say, up and down play because he's got the player option. So with the 3 names you mentioned, DA's got the player option, which if you waive a player, that player option doesn't go away. That would actually lock that in and you'd be on the hook for that. And then he would just be a free agent and could go sign elsewhere. And then Dalton also has the $4 million next year. So you don't want to waive future money. You want to waive current money. So the one guy that would stand out as an obvious choice would be Maxey, and you would just eat that money for the rest of this season. But I believe I was talking to Eric Pincus. I'm going to have him on the show soon to break down the summer plans and the different options for the Lakers. But I think roughly mid-February, it sounds like the Lakers, like right now they could sign Haywood Highsmith, they could sign whoever to the 15th spot. But if they were to waive somebody and try to create create a new spot for somebody, I think around mid-February would be when the prorated vet minimum amount they'd be under. Because one of the benefits too from the Luke Kennard, Gabe Vincent trade was LA shaved $500,000 off of their cap sheet. So they're now about 1.6 million under the first apron. So they have some more room to play with in terms of adding a couple players under that 1.6 million. So they could add someone right now. They could add Haywood Highsmith. Say that 5 times fast. They could add him whenever, and then they could also potentially convert Drew Timme or Nick Smith Jr. or sign Kobe Buffkin. Like they have options there, and they could do that later in the season. But I think it would be 2 players max, and that would require them waiving somebody. But I don't see them waiving anybody who has the additional money in years. And then following it up, Ali. I was reading it too fast, but Ali Latif says that would you cut anyone to open a spot for 2 buyouts? I would. I mean, the only player that I think makes any sense is Maxey, but I think he's beloved in that locker room. He's got a great relationship with Luka. I think he's one of those good vibes guys in the locker room. Now, he's making a lot of money, and technically it doesn't make a difference, right? It's just about the actual roster spot. It's not like the Lakers are going to save that money and get all these benefits from waiving him. Like they still have to pay him what he's owed. So it wouldn't really be a matter of that. But if we look at, it's not going to be LeBron. It's not going to be Luka. It's not going to be Rui. It's not going to be Austin Vando. It's not Luke Kennard. It's not DA. It's not Jake. It's not Marcus. Again, DK has the option next year. It's not going to be Jackson. And then we get to Bronny and Adu, and I don't see them. It's not going to be Adu, and I just don't see them waiving Bronny. So if you're ruthless about it, I would consider Maxey, it's tough to say that after the performance tonight. And look, maybe he continues to play well and that changes the tune here over the next few weeks of like you don't have to waive somebody right now. You could do it later in the season. Guys just have to be waived by March 1st to be eligible to play in the playoffs. So anyone that the Lakers are interested in just has to be waived by then. But it's tough. Like I think there are not like the Maxey arguments, more non-basketball reasons, and it just depends how pragmatic you want to be about it. But I think at this point, the fact that they didn't trade him and kept him past the deadline probably means he's just going to be on the team the rest of the season. So I also, in general, am like if you actually think about the buyout market, like most of the time, those guys like don't make a difference. Like, all right, you could highlight PJ Brown in 2008, but there's often a reason why these guys are on the buyout market, like in season. Like it's a little bit different in the off season we've seen the impact that DA and Marcus have had. But in general, if a guy is being bought out or waived or whatever, it's often not the best sign in terms of their play and the reason that they're available, because if they were at a certain level, they would not be getting waived unless like there's a clear financial incentive from their team. So I'm a little bit more ruthless, so I would consider it, but I understand the reality of the situation is that Maxey's probably not going to be waived. The Wannabe GMs podcast, thank you for the super chat. Am I crazy to think Haywood Highsmith is the best fit for the 5th starter? Depends which version of him the Lakers get. I think if they get the peak version of him or something close to that, you can make that case that he would make sense as the 5th starter. The last couple of years, he's been around 38% on threes, which is certainly, or shot 40% in 2024, 38% last year. So certainly an upgrade over Jake and Marcus. I think is probably closer to like Jake's level defensively than he is Marcus's level defensively. So I think you are taking like a little bit of a hit there. In terms of position, just looking at his play-by-play data on Basketball Reference, he has played 45% of his minutes at the 3 and 53% of his minutes at the 4. Played a lot of small ball, a lot of power forward in Miami. But more recently, that shifted toward, like, if you just look at the last couple of years, it was actually 55% at small forward in 2024 and then basically 50-50 in 2025. So he did start to play the 3 more. He's listed at 6'5", 220, which is actually kind of small for a 3, at least from a height perspective. But he's got that rangy frame, 29 years old. And you can make the case. I think at this point, from like a chemistry perspective and just how like Jake and Marcus, I think have largely played up to the role that what you've wanted from them outside of the shooting, right? The shooting has been a big up and down thing. I also think just like, hey, Highsmith's not played this year, so it's just tough to say. But look, if he comes in and earns it and is like shooting 40% and is up there defensively, maybe not at like the Marcus Vando level, but maybe like the 3rd best defender clearly on the team, I would be open to that. I just think that's overall unlikely, especially with how much time he has missed. The More We Know 77, thank you for the super chat. The Gabe Vincent era is over. Yeah, and it did dawn on me during parts of this game of just kind of thinking about, if Gabe Vincent was out here, like how would this be going? And would this be a guy Philly's targeting? And I think LA just naturally played bigger tonight and played, I mean, with the exception of Dalton, who again only played 3 minutes, the entire rotation was guys 6'5" and above outside of Marcus, who's like 6'3", 230. He's a giant 6'3". He's the biggest 6'3" player in the league. He plays like he's 6'5", 6'6", right? So they played a giant rotation tonight, and that I think is becoming part of the Lakers' newfound defensive identity, is like they're leaning more on their size. So it's over. Gabe, I do like, there's been a lot of talk about like his professionalism and like, I can just speak to all my interactions with Gabe were great. And I know we can sometimes let loose on here and like joke a little bit, but in all seriousness, like he's a good dude. And, I think was put in a bit of a tough situation in terms of like the Lakers you could argue that for a lot of guys on the roster in terms of like them being asked to do certain things that aren't necessarily their strength. He obviously dealt with the injuries the last few years, just did not live up to his contract. Not even his fault per se, but it was just the circumstance of kept getting injured and then was not playing well, was not shooting well. I think the injuries took a toll, and I think it was best for both sides to move on. But it is over. And the Lakers, I think now can lean into a new identity that has been working lately. Jay, thank you for the super chat. Should use the 3 picks for Herb Jones, not Giannis. You've come to the right place. I don't think I would use 3 picks on Herb, but I would consider 2 picks on Herb. I think it depends how he closes the season. Does he started the season off well, shooting well, then he tailed off, then he got injured. He's been injured a couple times. So I know New Orleans is going to be sort of trying to manipulate their, just like with tanking and stuff down the stretch. But I think if he can stay healthy and start shooting the ball better, those, like the 2 picks would be calling at me like the Green Goblin mask. But it's tough because I think he's more of a one pick in like, I don't know, a couple seconds type player. Even 2 picks is a little high for me the more I think about it. I am really high on Herb Jones. I think he'd be a great fit next to Luka and Austin. I think he's got a lot of, he's like a mix of Vando and Marcus in a way. And I mean that in a positive sense. Like he could do a lot of what Vando could do, but he's also much better offensively. Like he's he can run pick and roll. He can go coast to coast. He can attack bigs off the dribble. Did none of that against the Lakers, but I watched a bunch of film on Herb Jones, and like I think there's a lot there with his game. And he's also just not been playing with good playmakers if you look at New Orleans rosters over the last few years. So I think you can make a case even Austin is the best playmaker he would have played with, to say nothing of Luka or LeBron. And if we're looking at next year, it would obviously be, is LeBron even on the roster? But Herb is a guy that if New Orleans ever lowered the price, I'm not quite sure I would. It depends on the options, right? So it would not be my first choice to pay 2 picks for him. I would pay 1 pick for him in a heartbeat. I would even throw in like a second or 2 if that needed to grease the wheels. But I would say I think multiple things would have had to have not gone right for LA to overpay potentially for him. 3 picks I think is just too much. I get why they're asking for it, but Trey Murphy's a different story. Trey Murphy, you could sell me on 3 picks. I think 4 is a little too high. 3 picks, like he's a stud. I think he's a stud. He just needs to be on a better team. Herb, I don't think is at that level. Julia or Juilliard, thank you for the super chat. Did you see Chris Haynes' report that Giannis is happy and committed to the Bucks? FYI, Haynes is related to Giannis's wife. Yes, I did see that, and I'm pretty over this entire storyline. I don't know about you guys. This has been like one of the more frustrating stories to cover. It's just been like, just make up your mind, right? And it's just, I don't know. Like, and obviously he's had like the beef with Shams or whatever, and they've refuted some things, but then it was like Shams had the big report that not only like I would call it like a soft trade request, but also said in that Giannis had been telling the Bucks this for months and had been trying to push out for months, and they didn't refute that. They did not. Like, if that's me and I'm Giannis and that's not true, and I haven't been trying to get out for months, and because that's what like restarted this whole cycle, right? Like, it had been dormant. It was on everyone's mind. Like, is he potentially going to be dealt before the deadline? But it's like probably happening in the summer. Then the big ESPN report comes out, and then that's what like jumpstarts all of this all over again. But if it wasn't true, and I'm Giannis, I am putting out I'm posting something on my Instagram story. I'm having my agent come out and release a statement saying like, this is false. We have not asked out. We have not told the Bucks this. Like, but you even had the Bucks playing ball, talking to other teams about this, and like it's been really frustrating because it's like he wants out, but he does not want to be the bad guy. He does not want to officially ask out. He wants, this is, the typical, dating move of you try to sabotage the relationship to the point that the other person breaks up with you because you'll want it to be like weighing on you that you were the one who broke up and you created the separation. So you're trying to sabotage it to get Milwaukee to convince themselves to you're incepting them to be like, oh, it's time to move on. We need to get off Giannis. But this has just been an incredibly frustrating and annoying story to monitor and try to report on and learn about. And I can't wait till it's over. That's all I can say. And if he wants to stay, like, awesome. Be a one-team guy. Stay there. That's great. But come on, man. Like, why are you doing this? And then you're posting the Wolf of Wall Street thing. I thought that was super corny. It's just like, I don't know. He's got to make a decision. And Comb Hoodie, thank you for the super chat. Off topic, but that new J. Cole album is great. Got to check it out, Jovan. And what's your thoughts on him as an artist? So I've not checked it out yet. Obviously, I was at the game and have not had time yet, although I probably could have put it on, I guess, on the drive home. I have a little bit of a longer drive home. I really rock with J. Cole. Actually, my friends in high school, a couple of my friends, like right when he was just starting out, dropping, like, this is like pre-Friday Night Lights, was dropping his like early stuff and early mixtapes, my friends just like randomly discovered him before he even like, because he had like the sort of like pre-blow up, pre-Friday Night Lights buzz, but they were on him like super early. I have no idea how they even identified him, but like they started playing him for me, and I really liked a lot of his older stuff. But he's always been one of my favorite artists. I feel like he's the artist where when people ask me my favorite artists, I never say him. And then when I think about it a little bit later, I'll be like, oh yeah, J. Cole. Like, so I've been to a couple concerts. I do rock with him. It's a touchy subject though, with the whole Drake Kendrick beef, because you know where I stand with Drake. And I felt like I didn't like how Cole bowed out of the whole thing. And if you're going to drop the diss track, stand on business and just let it be. Don't retract it. And then, it was clearly going to escalate between Drake and Kendrick to a spot that Cole didn't want to be at. But I don't think it was going to escalate that way necessarily with Cole and Kendrick. I think it was more so just that was actually going to be like a bar for bar it was going to be less messy, right, than the Drake Kendrick beef. But I didn't like that. And, it seems like I know like Maul has talked about what's been going on with Drake and J. Cole and if they've even talked since then and sort of like the dynamic right now. So as a Drake stan, that was tough for me to deal with. But like putting that aside, I rock with J. Cole, and I know he gets the flack from people for being boring or whatever, but I think he's like, from a technicality standpoint, I think he's one of the best rappers of this generation by far. Now we could debate how entertaining he is compared to some of the other rappers, right? And I think that's like the knock on him from some people, but from an actual like rapping, just his bag and his flow and just, I think his skill as a rapper, he's up there with just about anybody, I would say, over the last 10, 15 years. Andrew, thank you for the super chat. Lakers going to sign Cam, Zoe, and Haywood. Well, it's going to be tough for them. Thank you for the super chat. It's going to be tough for them to sign 3 players because you'd have to waive 2 players. And I mean, really the only way you could do 2, I think, would be Maxey and Bronny, but I just don't see that happening. I just don't see that happening. Among these 3, I would rank them Haywood, Zoe, Cam. I am all the way out on Cam. He does not appeal to my basketball sensibilities whatsoever, but I understand the appeal. I do think there's a bit like, just depends on which spectrum you're on in terms of, there's like the hooper, like the pure, he's a pure hooper, right? And if you rock with that side, I totally get it. I'm more on the numbers side, and it just, I don't really like his inefficiency and style of play and whatnot, but it's okay. Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe it would be very Lakers to side Cam Thomas. I will note that. The more we know. 77, thank you for the super chat. It's crazy how the Bucks had almost every GM by the throat, only to say, haha, we aren't going to trade him. And Giannis saying he's staying. Clown. Again, just don't like how he's handled this. And because again, if people are putting things out that are fake, like he's pushed back on other things, he's refuted other things. So why didn't you refute this? And why did you let this take on a life of its own? And then it doesn't happen. And like, right before he does do the interview or whatever he said, where he's talking about wanting to stay. I think it was with the Milwaukee, Sentinel or something. And it's like, dude, just make up your mind. That's all. Like, if you want to stay, then I don't want to hear anything about you asking out in the summer or next season. Go be in the play-in tournament for the foreseeable future and like whatever. But yeah, I don't. It's been frustrating. Sir Haro, thank you for the super chat. Welcome back, AR. Yes, sir. Any buyout candidate? I think Haywood Highsmith is now we'll see if anyone else shakes loose, right? Like, again, I think you should have relatively low expectations with the buyout market, but I think that Highsmith right now is the best guy. 10 man, thank you for the super chat. any chances Middleton gets bought out, and what's the fit? Middleton is an interesting one for me because I would say he'd probably be number 2 for me behind Highsmith, just from like a positional standpoint of he's 6'7", 222 this year, not having an efficient offensive season. The 2-point shooting has dropped off. The 3-point shooting has dropped off. And he's also not quite the defender you want. So I'm actually kind of talking myself out of him mid discussion. He's fine. Yeah, I mean, I still think Highsmith, because I just think if we're actually talking about like what the Lakers need, I think it would be one of 2 player archetypes. It's a 3-and-D wing, or it's a more defensive minded center. And right now I don't see the defensive minded center being out there, but all the play, like Pat Connaughton is not the player he used to be and is a little bit on the smaller side. Lonzo's not not the player he used to be and has not been shooting the ball well. Middleton is not the level of defender I would want. Cam Thomas doesn't play any defense. So it's almost by process of elimination. Highsmith is like the only guy that gets close to that player archetype. And he's also a guy who's missed the first 50 games of the season, and you don't even know what he's capable of doing. So right now it's not a great buyout market, in my opinion. Like it's more name value than it is actual value, especially for what the Lakers need, in my opinion. Pinty, thank you for the super chat. Why did the front office not trade DK and swap for Jock Landale? So I don't have an answer to this specifically. My read on this would just be that they did not want to trade their swaps or firsts at this deadline, and they want to keep their swaps to potentially, I mean, we don't really talk about the swaps when we talk about the honest trade, but that could be some, like they could throw in all the swaps that they can. It's a little tricky because Milwaukee, they both don't own like picks in all the same years. So they can't, I think, throw in like every swap, but that would be my read on it. I think they might not think the center spot is as much of an issue as people on this side think it is, right? And like Jock Landale, he's a big physical, like I would sign me up for Jock Landale. I would rather have him than Dalton Connect, but it does feel like they're trying to go in this more like switch heavy, zone heavy scheme, and he doesn't like quite fit that. I think he's better than Jackson. They're better at different things than each other, but now Jock isn't as much of a Luka big. So like that's the other thing here that we have to keep in mind is like, are you a Luka big, right? And Jackson's a Luka big. DA's kind of a Luka big. Jock Landale's not really a Luka big, at least from an offensive perspective. So it's like, that's one thing. But yeah, the Lakers tried to trade Dalton. Nobody wanted Dalton. Chuck Dangler, aka Fang Charlie, saw your tweet battle with some dude who aggravated you. Tough being in your spot, Brate. I was up at 6:30 a.m. my time reading tweets. I like the Kennard trade for sure, though. Good value. Email, please. Thanks. Yeah, I don't really want to get into that, but I felt like, and look, it apparently someone who listens to the show, so I appreciate the support. I appreciate you listening to the show. I just ask that if you're going to aggregate me or quote me, do so in context, especially my sense of the aggregation once we got into it a little bit was that he basically was frustrated with something I said. So he just wanted to quote the part that he was frustrated with and blast it out. But I felt like it was a cherry picked version of my thoughts on the trade. And like, I do try to come at this from multiple angles. I try to present the full picture and while also presenting my opinion. And I try to walk that line of like looking at both sides of it, looking at the Lakers side, looking at the fan side, looking at my opinion and like sort of blending that all, also like the things I'm hearing. And ultimately when it came down to it, like I've been advocating for the Lakers to trade their first. You guys know this. I've been beating that drum. I was beating that drum in the offseason. I've been beating that drum since the offseason into now. I'm on team. Go for it. Try to do something. Try to do the most you can with the assets you have right now. Like that this team with some tweaks could really be a player in like the sub OKC range of, maybe sub OKC in Denver, but whatever. That's not how the Lakers viewed it. And I disagree with that. I've criticized it, but when I'm grading like the self-imposed constraints that they put on their trade deadline, I think like they did okay for like that, right? If we're operating under the assumption, not even the assumption, the reality that the Lakers were not going to trade their first, they were not going to trade Rui unless it was like a really clear-cut no-brainer deal, and they were not looking to even trade their swaps. There was even a point where it was sounding like they weren't even trying to trade the second, for them to end up actually trading Gabe, trading the second, and trying to give this group a little bit of a boost. Like that, I felt was like they did okay in that perspective. Now, in the grand scheme, when you look at OKC's giving up a pick and 3 seconds for Jared McCain, you look at what Minnesota did, admitting they screwed up with Rob Dillingham, and 4 seconds for Ayo Dosunmu. You look at what Denver did in the offseason and how aggressive they were, what Houston has done. San Antonio, it's been more organic, but they could have flipped the Dylan Harper pick and tried to do they identified him and drafted him and like have developed this core that they have. So yeah, you look at around the rest of the West and like it's kind of frustrating where it feels like those other teams are all in better positions, not just this season, but for the foreseeable future. And they have young cores and they have pieces that fit together. They have pieces that are locked in. The Lakers don't really have that, right? Like they have Luka, which is a great starting point that basically none of the other teams can match. Shea, Jokic, Wemby, okay, like Ant. Each team has like their stud, but they also have Austin. And then it goes into a bunch of, I don't know, right? I don't know who's going to be there. I don't know who fits. Most of the guys I think are bench players, not really starters. So it just goes down this rabbit hole of, I get the frustration. I understand where the fan base is coming from. But it's felt like recently, if you're basically not advocating for an overhaul with the front office, like some people just don't want to hear what you have to say or don't agree with it. And I get it. I get the frustration. It's just, there's also an element of I have to face some of these people, right? And if I'm going to call for a firing or an overhaul, like I got to face the consequences. And for me, also factoring in the reality of like I don't think that's happening anytime soon. I don't really see the point in that. But appreciate it. And I agree that Kennard was solid value based on like what the Lakers were trying to do. And then I do owe you an email. Bowen, shout out to Bowen, part of Buha's Brates. We need to schedule our hangout soon. Thank you for the super chat. Does AR bring more energy? Does AR bring more plus energy when Lakers are down than Luka? Luka's more iso ball and stops trusting. AR leads to more flow and passing. Thoughts? I think there could be something to that. Like, I mean, they do have different styles of play in general. So I think to your point, like there is more iso ball with Luka, and I don't think it's stops trusting. I just think Luka has his process of how he likes to start a game and like go through a game, and it's often being aggressive early, getting himself going early. That's why he has the big first quarters. And then that leads to a shift in the defense that then he starts to pick them apart with the playmaking. Whereas I think Austin, and even I would throw in LeBron to an extent, though LeBron, like I thought tonight, LeBron was in very much like pass mode. Sometimes he's more in score mode. Like he can go through his own flows. But I think those guys are a little bit more read and react and to like how the defense is playing, what the circumstance is, where I think Luka is a little bit more like he's got his rhythm that he wants to play through. So I mean, I do think that there's a difference in like when when Austin's at the helm, I think there is more ball movement. Like it's a different style of offense, but I think Luka ball leads to great results in terms of conference finals. The Lakers have been at their best from an offensive rating perspective with Luka on the floor. So I get that the aesthetics for some people, they just don't like that style of play. And I understand that, but from an actual results and effectiveness perspective, I think the numbers speak for themselves. But certainly I think with Austin and LeBron, there can be a little bit more. Like I think LeBron's found a really nice rhythm and groove with those bench groups where he's like the point guard / like post up hub, and then the guys are playing off of him. I think some of those groups have looked good. And I think with Austin, it's more just like Austin plays with a pace and a verve and a speed and an energy, like getting downhill and just like, it's like the Lakers can play slow sometimes, and Austin is just like a jolt of energy that I think they really need. Alma, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Jovan, even if LA somehow gets Giannis, no guarantee he or Luka or AR for that matter stay healthy next season. And then what? Big risk for a front office to assume we get better next year. Nothing is guaranteed. We need more depth. For the record, I'm on team like build out a great starting lineup, a great bench, and don't go for the third star. I think there are some stars that, maybe a star center or like depending on who the player is, I think there are maybe some stars that fit even a little bit better because I also have some fit concern. Like I think Luka and Giannis, I don't want to overthink the fit, and I think they are both great enough and smart enough to make it work. But I think they both would have to make adjustments to their games in ways that we have seen. I don't want like struggle is too negative of a word, but the Giannis Dame fit was just like never the cleanest fit. And we saw Giannis try to adjust to a ball dominant point guard who was, trying to run like the pick and roll game between those two. And I thought it made some strides, but it just never quite clicked the way you wanted it to. And then with Luka, we've obviously seen some of just like, maybe the limitations there with him and LeBron and some of the overlap there, and forcing LeBron to be more of an off-ball guy, more of a screener, more of a cutter. And like, you probably would have the same thing with Giannis to a degree. Of course, Giannis is better and is at a different level or different like phase of his career. But I just think it's not like the cleanest fit, I would say. It's a relatively clean fit, but there would certainly be adjustments from both sides. I think there are some players that would be, if you add like a high, like, I don't think these guys are available, but like if you add in a Mikal Bridges, an OG Anunoby, I think those guys just fit in perfectly next to Austin, next to Luka. There's no like figuring it out, or like you just slot those guys in and it works, right? Or maybe there's some screening centers that you put next to Luka and Austin, they're going to be great. So I would go that route. My dream, I think, hear different things on like the Walker Kessler price. I think it's going to be in the 30-ish million range, and I would be open to paying that depending on what the options actually are and like who's out there potentially for trade. So if the Lakers could steal Walker Kessler, that's probably my dream, like realistic, and only realistic with like understanding you're going to have to pay a lot. I think Walker Kessler is worth a lot. I would trade. I think there's an alternate version here, or maybe you do a sign and trade and you give up a couple picks. Apparently Indiana was trying to offer the package they offered for Zubats to Utah for Kessler, and Utah rejected it. So Utah thinks highly of Kessler, clearly based on their previous asking price and them rejecting that. But I think the Lakers should prioritize depth over star power. We've seen the 3-star build before. Ted Man, thank you for the super chat. Sign Cam Thomas and flip him in the offseason young. I just don't think this roster would maximize Cam Thomas. And I also don't think like the Lakers have already shifted more in the offensive offensive build with Luke Kennard in Gabe's spot. I know they had some good defense, like some terrible defensive stretches tonight, some good defensive stretches that ultimately helped propel them to the win. But this is still a bad defense on the totality of the season. And I just think adding Cam Thomas into that would be problematic. So I think it would honestly be a situation where he probably gets phased out of the rotation at some point, and he's not happy because he's going to be coming off the bench. He's not starting. He's not starting with this group. He's going to be at best like the sixth man, but even then, I would easily play Rui and Jake over him, and I think he'd be a little bit deeper in the rotation. So I just don't. I don't think it's a situation he wants to be in. I think the Lakers would have some regrets ultimately, and when I look at the makeup and like the mentality and the approach from the top 8-9 guys on all the other contenders, like Cam Thomas would stick out like a sore thumb. Like the nicest way I could put it is I just don't think he's a serious player. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Can we waive DK to get another roster spot and convert Kobe or Drew and get one more player from the buyout? They can technically waive Dalton Connect, but Dalton Connect does have the additional money for next season. So you would be on the they picked up his option, then they have another club option for 2027-28, but you'd still be on the books for $4.2 million for next year for DK. You could stretch it, but now you're putting that across multiple years on your cap sheet. So I think really the only two realistic targets to be waived would be Maxi Kleber and Bronny, because those are clean waves where you're waiving just the remaining money of this year. I don't think they're going to dip into future money. Like they did not want to take back $1 in a trade. I don't see them then waiving players and eating into that space next year. So DK and I think Ryan earlier had mentioned DeAndre. They're not touching that. You still would have to pay them into next year. But I think they're going to look. I mean, they're going to look at the buyout market, and maybe it gets to the point of waiving another player to create an extra spot. But I don't think we're there yet. Tommen, thank you for the super chat. Time Lord of Thibault will hit buyout market. Rob and Genie are pretty comfortable to be mediocre for the past 4 years. Such a shit show. Same results. If either one of those guys hits the buyout market, they immediately become my top choice. And I would have both of them ranked ahead of Haywood Highsmith. I think I would have it Time Lord 1, Thibault 2, Highsmith 3, and then everybody else from there. I love Time Lord. I've been a big, that's been a big Laker target for me the last couple of years. Thibault really just comes down to the shot and lack thereof. And I'm like, he's been up and down with it, right? So he's played 4 games this year, shooting 67% on threes. Okay, that's not sustainable. He did shoot 44% last year, but it was 15 games. But if we look at the actual, it's been 36%, 30%, 31, 36.5, 35. Like, he's been decent. It's on relatively low volume. I feel like maybe he's got more of a perception as a non-shooter than he actually is. I guess I don't know. Thibault versus Robert Williams is interesting. I mean, they both come with injury concerns. I'm looking here. The last injury update for Thibault says, he just remains out indefinitely, but I would assume that's just like a Portland thing. I don't know. I just think Time Lord is he's like Jackson offensively, but he's a better rebounder and a better defender and a better better defender in switching and also rim protection. He's a very unique player. He can't stay healthy, and I think he'd be more of a backup, but also a guy who could potentially close in some matchups. But that in that scenario, I would actually consider waiving somebody, and you're trying to figure that out to add both. But you can make a strong case in either direction. I'm just a little bit lower on Thibault as like a true rotation guy, but borderline. Lucas, thank you for super chat. What if CP3 is waived? Again, I think when we're talking about player archetypes that the Lakers need, it's 3-and-D wings. So I'm looking specifically 6'5" to 6'8". I want a wing in that range, or I want more of a defensive big. CP3, unfortunately, like, I mean, you could argue he could help run the bench to a degree, but we just saw this movie with Gabe, right? I don't want an undersized guard in the rotation who could be picked on defensively. So I like CP3. He's one of my favorite players of the modern era. I think he's criminally underrated. It's partly just due to his own nature and how he's conducted himself, and then also some of the the meltdowns in the playoffs and whatnot. But I still I'm a CP3 fan from that perspective of just like appreciation for his game. But looking at like how the Clippers season went and how things really took off after he left, I just don't know if he can shut that off. And that would be my concern, in addition to just, I don't know that the Lakers need to add a 6', 40-year-old player. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. People keep saying we need depth over Giannis, but what are realistic playoff ready 3-and-Ds and centers that we can get this summer via free agency? Rui, AR, Maxey, and even Luka become free agents, so you can't trade them. Or even Luke. Excuse me. The Luka is throwing me off. I'm not going to lie. It's already throwing me off. Rather get Giannis. That's a fair point. And that was sort of the point I got to. I have gone back and forth on this. I was on team depth, I would say, up until like the last week or so. And then I kind of switched to team Giannis. And then in the last 2 to 3 days, I would say I switched back to team depth. But I go back and forth. I think you can make, like, to your point, and this also is, I would say, this isn't, to be clear, a defense of the front office. This is just I think a reality check with the situation. If you look at the players who actually got moved, I don't know where the move or the player was that the Lakers could have got in on. Now, we could have a whole discussion about, okay, if you put the first on the table, is Nick Claxton available? Is Andrew Wiggins available, et cetera? I think there was a class of players the Lakers could have gotten involved with. But in terms of like the actual players who moved, there was no real transaction. I know people mention Jock Landale, and like, so maybe that's one. But for the most part, I kind of look at the moves and I'm like, I don't see where like the trade was for, like, twofold with what the Lakers were trying to do. And also, even if they were like trying to get in and be more aggressive, I don't really see where the player was that like fit. Like even I really liked Io. They got 4 seconds for him. Maybe a first is like, typically 3 seconds is around the equivalent of a first. I think a first is a little bit more valuable, but when you throw in a 4th second, like, maybe they still take the first, I guess, over the 4 seconds. But like, I don't know. I just don't know where that player was. The one guy I thought of was Ochai Agbaji, that maybe that could have been a player the Lakers could have got for just a second. But I would rather have him than Kennard. But that's neither here nor there at this point. In terms of the summer, though, I agree with you. Like, I don't really know where this path is to building all this depth. That's where, like, I think in theory, the depth, in theory, if you could wave a magic wand and say you have a team of depth or you have a team with Giannis, I would pick the two-way depth and just athleticism and adding the shooting, adding the defense, all those things. It's just easier said than done. I still, though, will note, if they add Giannis, I have my reservations as to their ability to fill out the rest of the roster, because they're going to have one exception and they're going to have a bunch of minimums. And they will have some bird rights. It depends on how things play out with DA and Smart and Rui and some of these guys. But they're going to have a relatively limited roster with a bunch of minimum players. And that scares me, because the stars can be great. The stars can be the stars. It could be the best big three in the league. And I think it would be. But if you have a bunch of minimum dudes, once you deal with injuries or you're just dealing with your bench, it's like it gets pretty grim. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. I know it's temporary because AR will start soon, but love Rui plus AR coming off the bench to generate scoring or to give scoring boost. Excuse me. We rarely outscore opponents' bench, but past 2 games been different. Hope Luka can see the Luka. I see the LUK and I immediately think Luka. Hope Luke can help with that and be consistent with his shot. Yeah, I mean, I see your point. I think, specifically the reason Austin has been coming off the bench has been the minutes restriction, and it was 20 minutes last game. It's 24 this game. So I don't think Austin's going to consistently be playing this little. He's going to go back to being a mid-30s player, and we'll go back to starting and but to your point, for those, I know plenty of people, whether it's Malik Monk, now Cam Thomas, whatever, people have been clamoring for the bench scoring, and I get it. And this is the sort of model for that. The flip side would be the starting group has been getting their butts kicked lately, and I think that's kind of run its course. I think they need Austin in that group. Is it Coswin Grant? I hope I didn't butcher that too bad. Thank you for the super chat. Cam and Lonzo, Dre Drummond if he gets bought out. So I assume you're saying Cam Thomas and then one of the other 3. I would rank these personally. I would go Highsmith, Drummond, Lonzo, Cam. Again, I'm not a Cam guy. I think if there was a scenario, I mean, I guess you would have to obviously interview him and talk to him beforehand. If he's willing to come off the bench and accept a 15 to 20 minute a night role, and some nights he plays 25, some nights he plays 12, it just really depends on his performance, the context of the game. I guess I would be open to that. If it's he's expecting to start or he's expecting to play 25 minutes a night, I just don't see where those minutes are going to come from. And again, even with how limited some of these guys can be offensively, if you just replace Jared Vanderbilt with Cam Thomas, I think you're actually going to be a worse team. If you replace Rui with Cam Thomas, I think you're going to be a worse team with Rui's ability to fit into the switching and on and on. When we get to the Dalton Connect portion of the roster, sure, I think he's better than Dalton Connect, but I think the Lakers need more of another 3-and-D wing rather than a scoring guard. He follows up. I don't know if he's expecting to play 30 or not. So I will. Maybe I'm too pessimistic here, but I'm bringing up the statement. So a statement to Mark Spears of Anscape was super excited, ready to actually help and contribute to another team. My next team is getting elite scoring, good playmaking, and a good combo guard. It just felt a little look, you obviously want to be confident. I'm not saying you shouldn't be confident, but I don't know. The elite scoring is where it's I don't know that the Lakers necessarily need that. They need someone who could play 18, 20 minutes and help the offense, but they don't. They have their 3 players, and Cam has also fallen off from an efficiency standpoint this year. Has not been the same player he was the last couple of years. And one thing of note that this is last 10 games, Lakers are 11th in defense. I think that is worth noting. Yummy asked, what about Duop Reef? That's an interesting one. Going to pull up his numbers. Solid shooter, right? So 36% his rookie year, shooting 42% this year. Relatively low volume. I wouldn't mind a flyer on him, but I would say he's lower on the list for me. like definitely Highsmith above him. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. I feel bad for AD, doesn't deserve being tossed around like this. Luka and Trey traded for each other. AD and Luka traded for each other. Now Trey and AD teammates. LOL. It is funny how that played out. I do feel bad for AD, and ultimately the big thing with him is just he can't stay healthy, and that's not his fault. Like I don't think I feel for guys when they can't stay healthy, right? Like it's out of their control. It's one. I mean, I know he's dealt with maybe some shape stuff, especially in Dallas, but he just has these freak eye things, or just, I mean, thinking about his Lakers days, like guys falling into his knee. You can't brace for that. You can't train for that. It's just a guy falls into your knee wrong. A guy falls into your knee wrong, right? And it's every season he's suffering some big injury that he has to rehab from, and it stinks. But I think he and Trey, especially in the East, will be a dynamic duo when he's available. I just don't know what that's going to look like next season. But yeah, Washington is going to be an interesting team because they've got some interesting pieces. I don't like love the young core, but I really like Alex Sarr and George. So maybe in Trey Johnson, kind of, and then we'll see what pick they potentially get. So yeah, exciting times in Washington, I guess. We haven't been able to say that recently. Nala, thank you for the super chat. Going to go a couple more minutes here, by the way. Probably wrap at 1:45. Thank you for the super chat, Nala. Only reason I have 50 million in space was for Giannis stream. Otherwise, it's unnecessary, and 30 million is enough flexibility. Hate giving the only second for a rental when they basically punted this season. Yeah, and I think the other thing that maybe I haven't touched on enough that so I'm doing Lakers Collective tomorrow and doing a follow-up show with Andy Kamenetsky, and we're going to talk about the deadline and the summer and just the season and state of the Lakers. It's a 50-game check-in. I think the part of this that has sort of flown under the radar is I think the Lakers have essentially admitted this is a transition year. This is a gap year. They did do the bare minimum of putting the second in and getting Luke Kennard, but I would even argue, and I argued this earlier today, that I think shooting was an important need for this group, clearly, but I think defense and athleticism are two bigger needs. Like if I'm ranking them, I would say defense 1, athleticism 2, shooting 3. They're all relatively close. So, and the Lakers had limited assets. So even if they were putting everything on the table, they still had limited assets. So I get that, like, they kind of had to choose, and it seemed like shooting was the easiest thing to get, especially in comparison to defense and athleticism. But it also felt like they did the bare minimum in terms of they gave the second and they addressed the need that was a need, but was not the most important need, in my opinion, because Luke Kennard's not helping the defense. He's actually hurting the defense. And this team, despite their recent play on defense, has been a terrible defense all season. And that's just like right now a fatal flaw with this group. They are up to 23rd in defense, I will note, which is progress. But yeah, 11th in defense the last 10 games and 8th in offense. So they are 8th in net rating over the last 10 games, 7-3. But yeah, I mean, they essentially admitted that this is a transition gap year by their actions. Juilliard, thank you for the super chat. Wonder if Luka eventually adopts more of a LeBron mentality of throwing shade to the front office publicly or expressing his thoughts on the team. I don't think that's how he's wired. I just don't think that is Luka. And honestly, like, not a lot of players do that. Like, I mean, yeah, I guess Giannis has kind of done it at times, right? And even some of his comments about like wanting to win and stuff has been sort of like, well, he had the sit down with Eric Name of The Athletic where he's like, you know what it's like to, he's talking about like basically implying like, what championship basketball looks like. Like, does this look like championship basketball? And like, I don't know. It's like just this weird, he's trying to be like philosophical and I think he's doing a little too much, but I could see Luka putting pressure on them behind the scenes, but I don't think Luka's a guy who's going to use the media to do that. I think he's more so going to be like, hey, I want XYZ and try to have more of a partnership that way. But I don't think he's going to operate in the way that LeBron has at times. Hey, Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Winners and losers from the trade deadline. I would say the Cavs were a winner for me with, I think Harden's at least available compared to Darius Garland, but I also really like the Keon Ellis pickup for them. They save money too. I think the Pacers are a winner for me. I'm a little bit lower, I would say, on Matherin than consensus. And I just really like Zoo. And it's going to be an interesting fit in terms of he doesn't play necessarily like as up tempo as they play, but I think he's better than Miles Turner. So like they'll figure out how to make it work. I think OKC and Minnesota for me also in the title, and I'll throw in New York. Like they're a little bit of a loser for losing McBride for as long as they're going to lose him for, but I like Alvarado is a pretty similar, at least from like a value perspective, replacement. But Minnesota adding Io, I love the Io move. OKC adding Jared McCain, love that. Like they didn't even necessarily need to do that, but they did it. I would say losers, like I think teams that like Sacramento, I don't really know what they're doing. I didn't love Chicago's deadline. I liked the Ivy acquisition, but otherwise it felt like they sold on some of these things a little too late and a little too low. Who else? I think New Orleans is going to regret not selling some of their guys. I think Dallas should have tried a little bit harder to sell some of their guys. I would say all the teams that didn't get Giannis, which, Minnesota, Golden State, Minnesota's a winner for the IO, but like that they were in the mix and weren't able, I think it's unfortunate for all those teams. Washington, I'm sort of in the middle of. I like the 80 move. I just don't know what a realistic ceiling is for an 80 Trey group with like their young players. I don't see that as like a championship group. Not that they necessarily need to do that, but like I feel like you want to feel like you have a championship ceiling. Then I felt like Toronto and Detroit could have made. I'm not a big Kevin Huerter guy. I feel like Toronto and Detroit were both ripe to like make more win now moves that they decided not to. So that's kind of my meandering thoughts around the deadline. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. Are there unrestricted free agent and 3D centers in summer that will pair well with Luka, Wiggins, Herb, etc. Can only be through trades, right? Unless Rui sign and trade, don't see new player depth. I see same roster. That's a concern of mine as well. I think, my top three targets in free agency are Walker Kessler, Peyton Watson, and Tari Eason. I think Kessler fits the center checklist easily. Eason and Watson are, they have the 3-and-D outline, right? Like Watson, I think Watson has emerged as a player who could do even more this season and looks like, a completely different player. Eason this year is shooting 49% on threes, has been at 34%, plus in all 4 seasons. So I don't think the 49% is going to sustain, but Tari Eason is a beast on defense and he's a plus shooter. So I think those would be the 3 guys. Like, I don't think you're not getting all of them, and you're probably not even getting 2 of them. But if you could nab one of those restricted free agents, almost certainly require an overpay. But if you could get one of those guys, I think that would be huge. Otherwise, Yeah, I mean, Mitchell Robinson is a guy that I like as a backup. I don't like as a starter. Isaiah Hartenstein, if they decline his option, would be a guy I'd be interested in. Otherwise, there's just not. It's not a great free agent class. I think the bigger thing is trades, and that's where LA hopes they could use some of those picks if they don't land Giannis. But yeah, I'm with you. Two more here. Lenny Hendo, thank you for the super chat. Cam Thomas gives Jordan Poole vibes a bit. LeBron's ball handling was nasty work, but glad we still got the win. Appreciate your Iron Man hours today. Thank you. Yeah, I've been live almost 5 hours today because I also did an interview right after for about 20 minutes. So yeah, it's been a grind today, but it's been fun. Love trade deadline, and it's like you don't know what's gonna happen, and then you check your phone and you see Ivica Zubac's going to the Indiana Pacers. Cam Johnson. Cam Thomas to me is a Jordan. And look, Jordan Poole was a big bench piece as part of the Warriors, but we've seen he had like this season and a half where he was locked in, and then it started to go off the rails, and now his career has taken a left turn. So I think Cam Thomas also, he's got like the Dion Waiters, J.R. Smith vibe, which if you can rein it in, but I also think he's early enough in his career where he's kind of got to go through his lumps. And I think he's 24, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he's 24. I think like 27-year-old Cam Thomas is going to be a different player. And I think he's on the arc of like, he's going to be a Jordan Clarkson, Malik Monk type. And like the high side of that is like Jordan Crawford, different player, Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams type. Like I think he could be that player, but the small combo guard who does not defend, that is like sixth man written all over it. And I just don't think he's in that like mentality yet with his career. And then final one here from Verbal Karate. Thank you for the super chat. Because LD and LBJ are so ball dominant, Lakers are missing opportunity by not letting Austin go ham in all the bench lineups with gravity from Rui and Luke. I said the right name, while still closing games, and no to Giannis depth and keep picks. So I will say it's, unless they get lucky in free agency, I think it's gonna be tough to keep the picks and not flip them this summer. I think they're gonna have to flip some of them. Just like I don't see a scenario in which they only sign guys and don't use the picks. I think they're gonna have to do a combination, quite frankly. But I'm with you and more on the depth side if they could pull it off. I think they're going to figure out some of these bench groups, right? I think there's going to be Austin. To me, I've talked about this before. He's the bridge guy. He's the guy who he fits with both Luka and LeBron. Like I think Luke, like you're going to start the first and third quarters with these guys, and you're probably going to close the second and fourth quarters with these guys. But in most of the middle portion of the game, I think you want to stagger LeBron and Luka as much as possible. You basically don't want them playing together outside of, again, starting and closing halves. Like those are the 4 to 5 minute stretches where Luka and LeBron play together. Otherwise, they're separate, and then Austin can vacillate between the two. I think you could argue it's probably better for him to be in the LeBron lineups because I think he's going to have higher usage in a LeBron lineup compared to a Luka lineup. And Luka can just assume more usage, I think, than LeBron can, right? So and LeBron and Austin have had their synergy going on, since Austin's rookie year. So I mean, I don't know if it's possible to stagger it where each of them gets a unit, and maybe they can carve out 3 minutes, 4 minutes for Austin to go crazy each half. And maybe that's a possibility. I think in general, Luka and LeBron can have their minutes decline a little bit, decrease a little bit. And that can maybe be where you find a window for Austin, but it's a good problem to have. But I agree with you. I would like to see more Austin centric groups, but you also have the Luka centric groups and you have the LeBron centric groups. And it's just like, it's hard to appease everybody and make sure everybody's feeling involved and engaged and all that. So I don't envy JJ with that, but I think it is something to monitor, and it is something to, the coaching staff needs to try to figure out. But with all that said, I'm going to wrap here. Appreciate you guys for rocking with me for 4.5 hours today. I really appreciate it. Today was a fun day, and I'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time with Trevor and Jason for a new episode of Lakers Collective. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about the trade deadline. We're going to talk about the summer, and then we're going to answer all your questions. And then I'll be back later at 2 p.m. with Andy Kamenetsky of Locked On Lakers and ESPN LA to discuss the deadline debrief, talk about the summer, and answer some questions from you guys as well. So appreciate it. Lakers improved to 31-19. Really nice win, especially after losing Luka in the first half. Hopefully we get an update tomorrow on Luka, but we shall see in terms of his status, and hopefully it's not anything serious. But appreciate you guys. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back later today. I will talk to you all then. Shout out to the Late Night Gang.